Welcome to another GCN Tech clinic where we endeavour to answer your bike maintenance related problems and questions. Now, as ever, you can get your questions to us on social media in the comments and using the hashtag AskGCNTech. Now, this is a special edition of the show, live from, it's not live, from inside my house because, well, we're on lockdown. So if it's not up to the usual standards you've come to expect, that's because I'm self-shooting it. First up, we've got a question from Cam Attica, who says that his girlfriend has spent some time on the turbo trainer in winter and she's got hooked on cycling. Brilliant news. And he'd like to modify his old Canyon Ultimate AL, great bike, so that she can ride it where they live, because it's currently got a compact chain set and an 1128 cassette on it, but they live in Austria and they're surrounded by really steep hills. I've ridden there and there are some really steep hills out there. So he's thinking of putting a 1236 cassette on. You know, he's wondering if he can do this with a wolf tooth road link. You absolutely can. That's what they're designed for. And you should be able to go up to, I think, like a 40 tooth cassette with a wolf tooth. They're actually quite popular with one-by systems, but should work with that. Yeah, I would say give that a go. It's definitely a more cost-effective option than the other thing, which is to buy a completely new rear mech with a longer cage on it. So yeah, give it a go. And yeah, send some pictures in on the app. We want a before and after. It'd be a good one for the upgrade segment in the tech show. Next question is from Rob98625, who says, after much recent Zwifting, yeah, we're all in the same boat, I think, with that, his bar tape stinks. Now, what advice or cleaning techniques would you give for a self-isolating Zwifter? Well, yeah, this is a thing that can happen. Something people do is actually wear mitts. Then your mitts stink and your bar tape doesn't stink. Another thing people do is put a towel over the bars. This helps stopping sweat getting, you know, into your headset as well. So added bonus, and then helps keep it clean, and you can use it to keep yourself dry. Another thing is you can actually clean your bar tape. So you can get a sponge with some washing up liquid on it and scrub it. And depending on the type of bar tape you've got, it can come up a lot cleaner. Certain bar tapes are better than others for this. So if you've got those sort of like corky, spongy bar tapes, yeah, they're going to absorb a lot more liquid and get really like, ugh. But if you've got like a sort of, you know, a smoother, thinner bar tape, then yeah, they sort of wipe clean and don't tend to absorb liquid. But, you know, a few options for you there. Next question is from John Potter, who says, like many, I'm in the process of upgrading or swapping to tubeless road tyres. My mind has turned as to what I should carry with me with regards to spares. What are the pros and cons of the various options for repairing punctured tyre? You know, should I use darts, plugs, worms, aerosol cans, things like that? Right, darts and plugs are really useful. I used some darts in Iceland, actually, when I was doing a gravel ride over there. But one of the things is that they do tend to like stick out of the tyre, which is fine if you're on a mountain bike or a gravel bike because you've got loads of clearance on the frame. But if you're on a road bike, you often don't have that much clearance, so the dart could like actually stick out and catch the frame, which could damage your frame as it's spinning around. So they're not always, you know, the best thing for that. Generally speaking, if you're using CO2 cartridges to reinflate your tyre, they are useful and are good at inflation, but they can freeze the sealant inside a tubeless system, which stops it working. So if you've had a puncture and then you try and like bang in a load of air with a CO2 canister, the puncture doesn't seal usually because, you know, the sealant's frozen. What I would say is take a couple of good tyre levers with you, like sturdy ones, not little flimsy ones, because tubeless tyre systems can be a bit trickier to lever on and off than a normal clincher. So, you know, that way, you can get your tyres off and have inner tubes, because when a tubeless system fails, and they do seal most punctures in my experience, but when they do fail, it's usually a catastrophic failure, which means you have to resort to just setting up with an inner tube. This also means that there's usually a big hole in the tyre, and a big hole means that if you just put an inner tube in, it'll hemorrhage out of that hole and pop. So you need to cover that hole with a tyre boot. You can buy them, or you can just use what I do, which is an old piece of tyre cut up and put inside to just help it stop and coming through. You know, cut up a bit of old bits of tyre, put them in your saddlebag. That'll be good. But generally speaking, you know, tubeless tyres, I would say it's the way to go. There's a lot more advantages to them than disadvantages. Next question is from Yoshida Noboru, who says he's thinking about upgrading to electronic or wireless shifting and was wondering what the worst case scenario would be if they were to stop working on a long ride. Well, the worst case scenario is you get to the bottom of a massive hill, and that's the only way you've got to get home, and you're stuck in the 5311. That is literally the worst scenario. But it doesn't happen often. You know, I've been running electronic gears for years, and I have had a couple of incidents where they have gone flat. It's never been that bad though. But one of the big advantages with the wireless system, you know, ETAP and SRAM access, that it has over like Di2 and Campagnolo, is that you've got 2 batteries. So I think I've got batteries somewhere around here. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So by having 2 batteries, you've got identical batteries on the front mech and the rear mech. And usually the rear mech battery goes first because it's getting used way more, doing way more shifts. So when that battery dies, if you need to change gear at the rear, you just simply put the gear in you want at the front because the battery's still working, take that battery off, put it on the back rear mech because they're not connected by any wires or anything, and then change gear as you want with the remaining battery life you've got left. But generally speaking, it doesn't really happen often because the systems have got better. You know, like there's a really good SRAM Access app to monitor your battery life, which is really useful. And on Di2, you can look at it with the little LED indicators on the junction box. That being said, it did happen to me in my early days using Di2. I got to the start line of a 10-mile time trial and my battery went flat on the start line, and I was stuck in the 53:15 for the whole time trial, which, you know, did result in my peak 20-minute PB cadence of all time, 112 RPM. Anyway, yeah, you should be all right. You should be all right. Don't let that put you off. Ron Gatenby says, one for Si. I'll try my best to answer this, even though Si's not here. With road bikes now getting disc brakes, wider rims and clearances, if you were riding 50% gravel, 50% road, what kind of bike would you buy? Gravel or road? What would be the tipping point? Would group set, GRX, compact or road enter into your decision? Assuming you've got 2 wheel sets, you can swap between them. Do you know what? With that question, totally go for ultimate versatility. Without doubt, I get a gravel bike, 100%. You know, even if it was like 20% gravel, if you really want to ride gravel, like a gravel bike's the way to go. So like this Orbea Orca OMX, I love it. And it's really versatile. It's got loads more tyre clearance than the old one. And I've actually experimented putting gravel wheels in it. You can do it if you really want to, but you don't have like, you're really pushing it to the limit with tyre clearance, to the point where I think you're going to be damaging the frame with like little bits of gravel and dirt and stuff, because there is very little tyre clearance, like, you know, in there and stuff and there. I would say gravel bikes can be really versatile. There's some really great models out there that are like, you know, aero and have just loads of tyre clearance. And the GRX rear mech is brilliant with that versatility because it can accommodate massive cassettes. I think you're fine with like a 50-34 chain set at the front, but being able to swap out your cassette is going to make a big difference, you know, being able to put on those really easy gears for gravel riding. And yeah, you're right, swapping out wheels makes it easy, but I'd go gravel if I wanted to ride gravel as much as you do. Now, next question is from Stefan Gudbergson, who says, thanks for a great show. Thanks, man. It says, with your experience of frames with vibration dampening, such as Bianchi's Countervail and Trek's ISOSpeed, do you think it's worth taking into account when buying a new bike? Yeah, vibration dampening does work. When you ride 2 bikes back to back, one that's got it and one that doesn't have it, it's noticeable. It does make an impact, but it's not earth-shattering. And Something that's often overlooked that makes a bigger impact in my experience is tyre volume and tyre pressure. So if you've got more tyre clearance and you can run, say, tubeless tyres at a lower pressure that are 28 millimeters, that will make more difference. But that said, you know, it'll make even more difference if it's combined with vibration dampening qualities in the frame. So, you know, although it doesn't make a massive difference, it does make a little bit of difference. So yeah, if that's important to you, it's something that is definitely worth considering as a feature. Next question is from Luis Moraes Sarmento. I'm sorry I've butchered your name there, but he says, thanks for your videos, even in quarantine, they're well produced. You haven't seen this one yet. Anyhow, he says he currently has Shimano Ultegra Di2, his cranksets are compact, and he's thinking of trying a semi-compact one, 5236. Nice, it's a good crankset. What changes does he have to make? Does he have to change the chain set or the chain rings? No, you just have to change your chain rings. So to do that, you're best off removing your chain set. You can leave your chain set on the bike to do it, but I mean, it's a much easier job to just take the chain set off. You will need the special Shimano tool to remove the special locking cap that you get on a Shimano chain set, but it's really, really easy to do, and that tool's just a little bit of plastic. It's not expensive. You'll also need a Torx key, which I believe from memory is a T25 on the chainring bolts, or it might be a T27. It's one of the two. Anyway, you'll need a Torx key. And the great thing about Shimano cranksets is, on the current generation, is that the chain rings are all interchangeable on all the cranksets. So the bolt spacing is the same, which means that you could put on this crankset, I could put on a 46 tooth outer chain ring, a 50 tooth chain ring, 52 tooth, 55, 56, you know, whatever, any of the ones Shimano makes, which is really cool, and a feature that, yeah, I'm a big fan of. They all have 110 bolt spacing. So yeah, just get some different chain rings. What you'll then need to do is actually adjust the height of your front mech. So your front mech will need to be adjusted and positioned a little bit higher. Make sure you get that right. If you don't, you'll probably drop your chain or find you dropping your chain. And although doing this and fitting your new chain rings, your system will work, I'm willing to bet, with the chain you've got on there, but it's not ideal, and it's a bodge. You should really change the chain to get optimum shifting and not risk damaging anything. So you'll need a slightly longer chain as well. Next question now is from Ian R, who says he's been meaning to change his bottom bracket and headset bearings. However, he doesn't know if he's got the correct one or correct size. Is there a model number I can find the bearings with when you remove it? Yeah, well, you can usually find out the exact dimensions of the bearings you need from the spec sheet of the bike. It's often written on there, like on the manufacturer's website. If they haven't put it on there, I'm sure if you send them an email, you'll be able to find out. And your local bike shop probably be able to help as well. Would you recommend any specific BB removal tools for the job? Well, I'll tell you what, there's a few things, right? So firstly, there are these little guideline tools which are really useful. These are for sizing bearings and for determining if you've got the correct size bearing, like kind of a stencil thing. But they're really useful for seeing if you've got the right size bearing, and all the different types of bearings are sort of written on there. So they're quite a nifty little gadget you can get. There are specific tools for removing headset bearings and for bottom bracket bearings, but if it's a one-off job and you're not going to be doing it often, it can often be worth just going to your bike shop and getting them to do it, because they've got all the tools. It saves you, buying tools that you're not going to use often. But if you do want to get the tools, and you do right, it's a good attitude to have, to be able to be self-sufficient and do your own bike maintenance. Park make like everything you'd ever need. This is a bottom bracket removal tool. So, well, you can use this to remove the bottom bracket bearings in a press fit system. You push this through and you use a mallet, and these prongs, as you mallet it through, these prongs push the bearing out. This is one for a headset with a wider bearing in the bottom of a headset. Now, the problem with these kinds of tools is that they're designed really for bearings that you don't want to use again, that are worn out, because these prongs can like dig into the bearing seal and damage it potentially. The last question this week comes from Andrew F. Sig, who says, being a heavy rider, what are the limits of high spec wheels that I can use? Well, you've not put your full specific weight in there, but it's not uncommon for high spec fancy lightweight carbon wheels to have weight limits of like 100 kilograms on some, 110, maybe 120 on some wheel sets. And one of the things, having researched this in the past for friends, is I've found that one of the best things you can do if you are a heavier rider is get some custom wheels made, which is always a nice thing. Maybe even build them yourself, but yeah, get some custom wheels made. Get some nice solid rims, nice wide ones where you can put big tyres in, make them tubeless if you want as well, and then just get a nice high spoke count. But people don't get custom wheels made as much these days, but you can really get some really nice wheels put together that are really bomb proof if you do that. So I'd suggest looking down that route. Right, well that's all we've got time for on this edition of the Tech Clinic, but as ever, if you've got questions, keep them coming down in the comment section, social media. If you've enjoyed this video, give us a like and a follow, and yeah, I'll see you next time, probably in quarantine again. Could be worse though.